Hello guys, hope you're doing well as always, and welcome back to another video. And today we are in Leyton exploring a stadium, although it's not that one.
The stadium we're visiting instead belongs to Leyton FC, a club with a very complicated backstory, so bear with me. Founded in 1868, the first incarnation of Leyton folded in 1880 after losing their original ground known as the Lion and Key. Then in 1897 they were reformed, achieved professional club status at the Hare and Hounds, later moving to Osborne Road, now the home of Leyton Orient. In 1912, however, one of the investors decided that he wanted his money back, and with Leyton FC unable to pay it back, they folded again. Roll on 1913 and Leyton FC were reformed for their third attempt, back at the Hare and Hounds pitch, although the breakout of World War I in 1914 saw this attempt short-lived, and once again they were disbanded. But their dreams weren't given up for long, as 1 year after the First World War ended, the club were formed for a fourth time in 1919, and over the next 26 years they changed their stadium 8 times. Starting off by playing at the Hare and Hounds, they soon moved to the Leyton Cricket Ground, back to Osborne Road, then to Green Pond Road, Lee Bridge Speedway, back to Osborne Road, then off to West Ham's Bowling Ground before they finally settled back here at the Hare and Hounds, where they remained from the end of the Second World War. But things weren't finished there, as in 1975 they were forced to merge with a team called Wingate, becoming Leyton Wingate FC, until 1995 when that partnership faded and the club went back to Leyton FC. However, they soon merged with Walthamstow Pennant, moved away from the Leyton Stadium again, and that team are now just known as Walthamstow. In 1997, the final version of Leyton FC was born, bankrolled by a man named Costas Sophocleous until their eventual demise in 2011.
So very clearly a club with a very troubled history that now no longer exists. Only 20 minutes down the road from the much more successful Leyton Orient FC, the stadium that was once known as the Hound and Hares, named after the pub that I've just been in, is somehow still standing. And in fact, Saffron Kitchen, the Indian restaurant that now stands there, that building actually used to be the clubhouse for Leyton FC. And speaking of which, we are now getting our first sight at this abandoned ground, seemingly used as a car park and a host for wedding venues, which I have done some research. But the state that it is in is mental. Absolutely mental. I'm going to go around and show you guys a proper look, but this is derelict. I feel like is not even a strong enough word. A club with 143 years of history, and this is all that's left to show for it. It is mental to think that a stadium could just end up like this. I mean, admittedly, it has been over 10 years now, but the state of it is just crazy. Even the stands themselves have been turned into a dumping ground, and it's so sad to see. You know what, we're gonna go and have a seat. It's probably been a while. Look at the cobwebs on that. Probably not the safest place that I've had to sit at a football match, and I mean, admittedly, I'm not watching a football match. As you can see from the pitch, it's not in anywhere close to being in a state to host a football match, but I just can't get my head around it. I mean, obviously you've got 2 stands that are still here and obviously derelict. However, just looking around as well, this stadium used to have the capacity of between 4,000 and 5,000 people, and now to see it used as a car park and a place for wedding venues is really sad to see. And I suppose it's the one thing it's making me think is how important it is to support your local team, because if you don't, this could be your local team stadium. So how did a football club whose history lasted 143 years end up with its stadium looking like this? It's a very, very good question, and ultimately it comes down to dodgy owners, which tends to be the case with the downfall of a lot of football clubs, whether or not they end up in a situation like this or whether they end up dropping down the leagues. However, the chairman at the time, Costas Sophocleous, and the former director, Philip Foster, were found guilty of fraud in 2009. And not just any fraud, by the way. It was £16 million VAT fraud. And ultimately, that was the ball that got Leyton FC's demise rolling. And needless to say, the chairman was eventually jailed for 8 years and 6 months. And in January 2011, after failing to make the payments to clear off their debts under a new ownership, Tony Hardy, who himself had put so much money into the club, unfortunately the club were relegated from the Isthmian North Premier 1 League, and just 2 days later Tony Hardy had resigned. And that was ultimately the final nail in the coffin, as within less than a week the playing staff and the remaining club staff that was still there had handed in their resignation, and Leyton FC were no longer a football club. At least there's still room for one more spectator to fit. Oh,
Oh, you are the last remaining season ticket holder, aren't you? So of course this was once the playing surface, now used as a car park. You can just see, even from me walking now, how overgrown it's become. The away dugout there is completely smashed in, and you can see the wildlife taking over. It is quite strange though, because obviously all of these advertising boards are still there, but the Leyton FC sign lays in ruins. I wonder if any of those companies are still going actually. Just give them a ring and find out. I've had to sit down already, but I will be honest, I don't think I'm going to chance that. It is sad just walking through here, because you look at all of these empty stands behind me, for instance, and obviously this one has collapsed in. Probably not a great example to show you, but in other ways it is a good example to show you, because you think about how many people would have filled these stands beforehand, bums on seats, watching football, and now it is just, I mean, look at that. It is just ruined. Football is a complicated thing to explain, because a lot of people who don't like football will just see it as 22 blokes kicking a football around trying to score a goal. But football fans and true football fans will understand that it is more than that, and the emotion that goes into it, whether you care about the teams or not, it really can just take over. And sport is a wonderful thing for that, football especially. But it really is just such a shame to look at what this has become. Once a hub for community, now just a car park and a dumping ground. And standing in the corner of the pitch as we are now, it's actually near impossible to work out where the actual pitch used to be, how far along it came. Was it there? Was it further back? I don't know. It is just so deserted, and so much time has passed that it is just left to be ruined and to become what it is today. No one's saying that Leyton FC were ever going to become a world beater in the world of football, but at the same time they were around long enough to play AFC Wimbledon after they rose from the flames as a Phoenix club themselves. And anything's possible in football. All it took was the right owner, and unfortunately Tony Hardy wasn't the man for the job, and obviously what stands behind me now is a result of what's happened there. But it's just one of those things where you look around and you just think of what could have been. I'm not saying again that they would be in the Premier League, but there'd still be a football club here if things were done better, and most importantly if that dodgy ownership dealing that happened earlier in their history had never come to fruition. You can just about make out, as the sun's setting, behind that marquee, the clubhouse that used to stand there before. And in fact, just behind the marquee you can still see what's left of the old main stand that used to be there before. Even the seats are still intact. That's crazy. You've obviously got the speaker up there as well to make announcements. I'm assuming that this may have been something like the dressing rooms. I can't entirely make out from what it's now become what it used to be. Even the sign for disabled viewing still up. Now the host to a skip. This presumably as well would have been a car parking space. It's just a dumping ground. A car park that leads onto the restaurant, so I'm not going to go any further than that. Walking further along, I'm assuming that this was a building that was used for refreshments and stuff like that. Your half-time burger, your half-time Coke, whatever it may have been. But even that has just become a dumping ground for plants used by the restaurant. You've even got the nets up the end of where the goal used to be, stopping the balls from going into the garden. But truthfully, it's almost been 15 years since those nets were even needed to be used. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is all that stands of Leyton FC. So as we can see, it is very clearly a dumping ground for just anything that these local businesses can chuck in there. But let's take it back to the very beginning. How did Leyton FC even end up becoming a football club in the first place? A man called Reverend Morgan Lloyd purchased an area of land, not to be confused with this one, and started up Leyton FC, and it was his intention to create a football club that was the first in North London as well as East London as well. In fact, they were only the second team formed in London after Cray Wanderers, who played their football in the southeast of London. But then later down the line, they ended up playing their football on this surface right in front of us here, even associated with their own famous faces themselves. I've read online that Harry Kane is supposed to have fallen in love with a beautiful game here. Now, whether that means he played on that pitch over there, I'm not entirely sure. I know in their peak they had 10 youth teams associated with Leyton FC, but due to the vagueness of what I've read online, it could very well just be that he has simply come to watch this team play football when he was a kid. Another notable name who once featured for this team for one season only, in fact that was at 1898-1899 1998-99 season was a man called Billy Barnes. Now, a lot of people from this day and age wouldn't have heard of this man. However, he was a big name in the football world back then. In fact, after he left Leyton FC, he ended up moving to Sheffield United and actually scored the winning FA Cup final goal in 1902. But Billy Barnes' story doesn't end there, as after the First World War broke out, men of all ages were called up to fight for the British Army. But not Billy Barnes. He chose not to, and chose a move that would have been seen as cowardly at the time, to go and manage abroad, more specifically in Spain, even more specifically, Athletic Bilbao. His move to Bilbao saw him take on a management position, and in his first 2 seasons at the club, he won back-to-back Copa del Reys, including a 4-0 thrashing of Real Madrid in his second season at the club. But unfortunately for Leyton FC, they were never able to reach the same heights as Billy Barnes, as they never actually got past the 7th tier of English football. And as I now sit in the home dugout just next to me, only a few benches remain inside, and it is a real sorry state to see how this club has been left. So, ladies and gentlemen, if this isn't a kick up the arse to go and see your local team, to be honest, if I'd seen a video like this a few years ago, I probably would have just looked past it. But those of you that would have watched the FA Cup Road to Wembley series last season will know how much fun me and my dad had watching our local side Red Hill and progressing through the competition, watching other non-league teams such as Whitehawk, such as Worthing, such as Alfreton, and it truly is a load of fun. So go and do it, because we can't let more clubs like this die. We've seen more than enough in the last few years. Bury FC, we're lucky to see, are making a comeback at the moment. I don't want to sound like football Twitter here, but support your local side, because it truly, truly means more than you know. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching as always. I hope you've learned something new, whether it's about Leyton FC or whether it's about Billy Barnes, who knows. But as you can see, the state that this is in is extremely sad to see, and it is such a shame that this place was once a hub for people to come and congregate and watch football. Up to 5,000 people, now just completely abandoned, completely left for nature, for wildlife to take over. It really, really is such a shame to see. So let's not let this happen again, ladies and gentlemen. Let's do our best to keep these small clubs alive. Thank you so much for watching as always. I hope you have enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, peace and love.